Alright everyone, Hillary Clinton still doesn't know when to quit when she's ahead. She already had her supporters in the wake of the election. She loses in a historic landslide, in an electoral sense, of course, for Trump. And she gets drunk. Podesta has to come out the night of, say, oh, yeah, we'll make an announcement tomorrow, we'll talk to you tomorrow. She has to come out and, of course, concede, apparently talk to Obama several times then. Was roaring mad. He had to calm her down. Podesta and Bill had to calm her down. She's like throwing shit around. Comes out and says, oh yeah, I lost, blah, blah, blah. And comes out in her purple dress and so forth, showing her fealty to her new president, who, is responsible for the executive function of the United States, and it wasn't her. She was very sad and upset. Almost immediately, she embarked upon an apology tour for herself to blame Russian hackers for her election loss. And her fans gobbled it up, which was funny because, of course, both she and Obama had only weeks before said, oh, it's impossible to hack a U.S. election. The Trump talking about rigging the election, that's just dangerous nonsense, and, people shouldn't say that. You need to have faith in our republic. Now, of course, these same people are piling aboard the let's investigate everything train. It's all sour grapes. It's going to go fucking nowhere. That's the truth of it. It's the long and short of it. They can believe that it will, but it won't. Now then, so she blames the Russian hackers, the mythical ones, WikiLeaks. Oh, Russia, Julian Assange is a Russian. Comes out, her fans gobble it up. Then she starts blaming Comey. And some of her fans are like, okay, we've heard this before. You've already blamed Russia. Now you're blaming the FBI director, the one that Trump fires, and then they get upset about that too. And people sort of tune it out a little bit more. They're like, well, maybe you should just quiet down and go back to civilian life. Why don't you start another charity, one that's actually charitable? Why don't you do something, good with your last years of life instead of just complaining for the next foreseeable future? Now she's blaming a new party. Now she's blaming the DNC itself. Oh, the DNC helped me through the primaries, but as soon as the general began, they abandoned me. They gave me no money. They were too busy propping up senators and people in the House of Representatives. They gave me nothing, and I had to take time out of campaigning to raise money. Oh, that explains all of your $100,000 a plate Goldman Sachs speeches. It's more sour grapes, so she doesn't know when to quit it. She's a woman without any real cause at this point. She's been totally divorced from the political situation. The Clinton MO is when you win, you stab anybody in the back who didn't give you full support. When you lose, you stab them in the back anyway, whether they did or didn't. James Comey did not destroy her campaign. His letter was certainly not a help to her. But WikiLeaks, the slow dripping of leaks from the DNC and Podesta emails, was already doing damage. Project Veritas was already doing damage. Drudge at doing actual journalism was doing damage. The existence of the internet itself was doing more damage than everything else combined. Because Hillary Clinton, when she was meme-worthy at all, was a cringe-worthy meme candidate. Not like Donald Trump, who was simply off-kilter, chaotic, and at times funny. And so it simply worked for the social media era. She should be blaming the existence of the internet. Why doesn't she be honest? Say, yeah, a bunch of actual cool kids, aka people who weren't already, young adults in the 1990s, stopped me because they don't think the DNC has any youth appeal, and I far less even the Democratic Party as a total. Why doesn't she just wise up to the fact that saying we're going to break the glass ceiling doesn't magically cause every female in the country to vote for you? Why doesn't she own up to the fact that saying she carries hot sauce in her pocketbook doesn't get every black person in the country magically to vote for you as part of her weird minstrel show politics, her minstrel show pandering, which is what it actually was? Why doesn't she come out and say, oh yeah, the Democratic Party is hemorrhaging support from the middle class that we ignored for 8 years, and the youth that we've ignored for even longer? That's the reason why she lost. She was a crappy candidate with no real platform in a party that has no real platform and still doesn't have one. That doesn't mean the DNC shafted her. She also tries to blame now the media. A few days ago, she came out, the list of suspects for why she lost mysteriously omits Hillary Clinton herself. Hillary and Obama, whose weak-ass recovery never extended to the Rust Belt. Those are the reasons she actually lost the election. It wasn't a money problem. My goodness, Hillary Clinton spent over $1 billion in advertising during the election. It's not like she was an impoverished candidate. She wasn't. She kept canceling speeches and rallies that she was going to hold. She wasn't that she was canceling them to go fundraise because she was hard up for cash. She had hundreds of millions of dollars at all times in her war chest during the campaign, more by far than Trump ever raised or spent in his grassroots self-funded manner. She outspent him, I think it was in the end, the 3-to-1. At times she had outspent him 10-to-1, periodically. And meanwhile, she blames Comey, the same Comey who let her off despite the fact that she's guilty as sin, and he basically said that on a national stage. So she shouldn't be blaming Comey. She blames the DNC that rigged the primaries for her, when if it hadn't rigged the primaries, there would have been an actual danger that Bernie Sanders was the candidate. In honesty, the progressives are correct to speculate that he could have very well won had the primary system not been rigged. It was the fact that he was running against Hillary Clinton, not his own platform, which was the reason I speculated he wouldn't get it. Because the Clinton MO is to, dirty dealings, the backroom deals, Goldman Sachs money, stuff from foreign countries that ends up in some slush fund, reabsorbed through some domestic corporation and then spewed out all over her campaign. That's the way the Clintons do business. It's the way they've always done business. There was a reason Sanders never had a real shot. He would have had to have had massively higher support than Clinton. A 50-50 cut wouldn't help him. He would have had massive support. And the idea that some right-wing media conspiracy stopped her campaign beyond Drudge doing actually some journalism is retarded. You look at the DNC emails, MSNBC, CNN, the Colbert Report, they were all in her pocket. They were literally taking marching orders from Clinton's staffers, offering to retract material that she didn't like, offering to put up a bunch of fluff pieces about her and how great she is while ignoring issues that she's clearly not great on. They were all in her pocket the whole time, and the DNC especially. They rigged the... You think they didn't want her to win after spending millions of dollars rigging the primaries against Bernie Sanders? Now, she lost because her opponent outmaneuvered her in the social media realm, and because Clinton no longer has the youth appeal connotations it did in the middle of the 1990s. Back when Bubba Bill would come out, he'd bring his saxophone and he'd wine and dine the audience a little bit. He'd do some smooth talking and smoke a cigar or something like, or say, yeah, I tried marijuana, man, I was one of the cool kids, but don't worry, I never inhaled, so all you soccer moms can still vote for me. I'm not telling anybody to do drugs. That's 90s stuff. That's not modern. We're in the 2010s now, not the 1990s. It'd be like if someone was still campaigning on I like Ike. Yeah, we're gonna put more satellites up in the atmosphere. This is a winning campaign strategy or something like that. She's an outdated, boring candidate. Back in the 90s, when the Clintons were young and fresh, comparatively, they were considered cool, but that's the MTV generation. You don't have social media. You only have the very basic trappings of the internet as it is today. You have to wait till halfway through the Clinton era altogether before you get some primitive text-only chat rooms, and it's more than just email and some standalone sites. The internet was much more sparse back in the 1990s. It was much less interconnected and a hell of a lot less fast for instantly transferring information. Now look at it. That people connect to it with a simple cell phone, which is something they never thought possible back in the 90s. Anyway, technological limitations prevent this from occurring. We can only miniaturize so much. Unless you want to carry around a backpack-sized cell phone, you will never be able to do such a thing. In a very odd way of viewing reality. That's why she lost, not because the DNC abandoned her. The DNC didn't abandon you. You were raising plenty of money on your own. You outraised and outspent your opponent multiple times over, and you're complaining that they didn't throw enough money and support your way. What support were they supposed to give you that they hadn't already given you? They rigged a primary system for you. They're being sued right now for doing so. Unfortunately, they'll probably prevail because, technically speaking, yes, as a corporation, which the DNC is, they're capable of coronating any candidate they happen to want. They can switch the game around as much as they choose. The only problem might be getting on the debate stage if they make it a little bit too obvious that they're doing that. So they just bury the story until after the election, say, whoops, yeah, we made a little bit of an oopsie-doopsie, sweetie pies, but it's okay. Hillary Clinton blaming everybody but herself. She's blamed everybody in the country but herself now. White women are the problem. Minorities didn't vote for me enough. The DNC abandoned me. The corporate media is all far right-wing. Yes, like MSNBC wasn't already taking orders from you to begin with. It was Obama's fault. It was James Comey's fault. It was the Russians' fault. This list includes a hell of a lot of people, including most of the voters in the United States. The one thing it doesn't contain is Hillary Clinton's name. The one person most responsible. And she prefaces these little rants of hers by saying, I was the candidate, I take absolute responsibility, but I don't really take responsibility because reasons X, Y, and Z. That's what she really means. She wants to look humble, but she's not. She's bitter. She thinks that she deserved that position. Well, now you'll never be the president of the United States. Next time around, you'll be Bernie Sanders' age. You'll be a bit too old to capture any youth appeal at that point. You could have somebody who's in their 70s capture youth appeal if they have something intelligent to say. If they understand social media, they're not like a relic clinging to the MTV generation or something. That's just fine, but Hillary Clinton's not that person. Now they're talking about maybe Joe Biden will run. He probably should. People would receive him better than Hillary Clinton, although I don't think he'd get the nomination, honestly. Then if they nominate Joe Biden, he'll be a sitting duck when it comes to Trump's strategy. Because he tries to do the same thing and usually makes a fool of himself. It's funny, without being politically very effective. That's about all. Peace out.